I've seen hundreds of such masks being sold by curio sellers in the streets.
One of the other things that comes up in terms of the way they look is the domed head. Now, I was in Egypt recently and saw depictions of Nefertiti and the Akhenaten family, and they had big domed heads. Is this a connection?
Yes, yes, sir. You see, we human beings tend to imitate those creatures that we call gods. It's going on even now. When African women saw white people, they named them Abelungu, which literally means the gods. And today, in America and in Africa, black women and some black men are going out of their way to give themselves hair which is European and not African in character. Now this thing it dates back thousands of years. First of all, the one race of the Chitauri, the ones that are called Nomo or Nomo by the Dogoni people, are depicted as having beard-like growths of the same type that look like the beards of Egyptian pharaohs. They are shown having, it is said that when a Chitauri gets very old, after tens of thousands of years, he or she develops a bone-like growth under the chin which twists around like the horn of that kind of fish-like creature I saw in Europe in a picture called a narwhal. And this thing curls up this way. Now, Egyptian pharaohs used to wear beards like that. And some African kings wore beards like that, real beards or even false beards made out of ivory or out of the tusk of a warthog. And there was a time definitely in history when African kings as well as Egyptian pharaohs went out of their way to imitate the appearance of the Chitauri. Queens like Nefertiti had their faces misrepresented by the court painters. They looked exactly like the Chitauri as near as possible. The high cheekbones, the drooping chin, the unusually large head. African sangomas, African inyangas, ancient Egyptian pharaohs, all of them used to wear headdresses that made their heads look much larger than they actually were. If you look, say, at the crown, certain crowns worn by Egyptian kings, the whole head, the crown, is intended to be an extension of the pharaoh's head to give the pharaoh an appearance of above average intelligence. In Africa, we had kings who favored headdresses made out of the scrotums of elephants or rhinoceroses or even buffaloes. A scrotum which was dried and made bulbous and worn on the head by the king to make his head look larger than it was. And lastly, in ancient Greece, at the time when Greece reached the great heights in its culture and civilization, the great ruler Pericles used to wear a special soldier's helmet with a bulbous skull, a helmet which made his head look much bigger than it really was.
Do they still do that today? Are there still African traditions that do that?
Yes,
today?
yes, very much so. And in America, some Native American shamans used to wear a special hat made out of the head and the horns of a buffalo, which also made the man's head look bigger than it is. Say, the Pope in Rome wears a hat which is intended to show him as having a brain bigger than average. That crown which has got three crowns, one on top of the other one. And now, bishops, especially in the Greek Orthodox Church, they wear crowns like that. And the Tsar of Russia, one of the Tsars, wore a bulbous crown which was in two sections, which made his head bigger than it really was. And in Persia, in Iran, some ayatollahs wear a turban whose effect is to make the man's head look bigger than it is. So does a Sikh. And so, for that matter, to the ancient priests of Israel, they also wore an onion-shaped headdress, whose impression was to give him a far and above size head.
Aren't there also traditions in which they manipulate children's heads as they're growing so that they become more stone-like?
Yeah. During my travels in Africa, I came across an amazing people whom you must visit. They are called the Mangbetu people, and they live near Lake Rudolph in Central Africa. They are a beautiful, aristocratic people. And what they don't know about the universe is just not worth knowing. The Mangbetu people believe that an elongated skull with a flattened forehead pleases the gods. They flatten the skulls of their children, causing constant headaches to the child, even when the child has grown into adulthood. And I asked a beautiful Mangbetu woman, "Madam, why do you torture your children this way?" The woman, the wife of a senior chief, said to me, "Look, the gods want us to be like this."
Story that you're telling, Credo, from the African perspective, is it in effect the same story as told in the tens of thousands of clay tablets found in what we now call Iraq, who've become known as the Sumerian tablets, that talk about a race of gods called the Anunnaki, who came in and brought knowledge, ruled the people, and interbred with them?
Yes.
Do you say, therefore, that the Anunnaki in those stories that have increasingly, of course, been translated in a number of books, they were reptilian, you say?
Say, all I do know is this, that here in South Africa, amongst the Xhosa people, amongst the Zulu people, there are beings who are very revered even now, and they are called Amanuna, or Amanono. Amanono is Zulu, Amanuna is Xhosa. Now these beings are godlike beings, we are told. They can change their faces. They can change their appearance.
They can shapeshift.
Yes, sir. they are shape shifters. A manuna, now if a Xhosa man has married a very beautiful wife, a wife whose face seems to change every day, he teases that wife by calling her his inuna, linuna lam. In other words, a shape shifter. It is said that the people who are closest to the hearts of the manuna gods are women. And why? Because the women give to the manuna the power of, they worship the manuna, they hero worship them, which explains why Nefertiti wanted herself to look like one of them, and her children too. She was actually hero worshipping these creatures, and the how you say, women say, are copycats, and I'm not being sexist when I say this. Women will copycat any being that they think is supreme.
In Egypt also, you have the python-like headdresses, which are pretty obvious when you look at them, that the pharaohs were connected with.
Yes, sir. And the reptile has played an unusually strange part in the culture of all African tribes. For example, it is my suspicion, sir, that we black people of Southern Africa are going to be deprived of our nationhood in the very near future, and that we are going to be ruled by people of Uganda. But wait, what is the real meaning of the word Baganda? Baganda. And what is the creature that you see depicted on the walls of houses and on the roofs of houses of some of the greatest empires in Africa? It is